mean, I started growing a beard at like 12, so it's just one of those things.
That's awesome, man. I can relate to that. I actually started my business in my early 20s. I had a construction business for 18 years, and people did not. They're like, "Where's the guy? When's he coming?" And I'm like, "I am the guy." They're like, "You're doing all the work in our house." I was like, "Yeah." So, anyway, but yeah, I totally can relate to that, man. You had to earn that trust with people. But
Right, right,
sweet.
absolutely.
Yeah, man. So I love it. Yeah. So, like I said, I saw we had met before, Pace interviewed you and stuff, which I'm thankful for now. So, I'm just not a bandwagoner fan, but let's talk about that deal a little bit. Let's talk about, that deal where it was basically you made some life-changing money, right? It was a sub 2 deal before you joined the sub 2 group, right? Let's talk about that.
Hey,
Yeah,
let me ask one question before you do,
Yes.
man. 'Cause I've got
Sure.
a quick question.
Yeah.
So, like leading up to that deal, Josh, how many creative deals had you closed up to that point? Because I'm assuming like you had to do some degree of figuring it out or some degree of learning up to that point, and then
Mm.
once you felt confident enough to undertake something like what you did.
yeah. So, do you guys know who Joe Fairless is? Joe Fearless? I think it's Joe Fairless. He's popular mid teens, like 2015, 2014, popular. He
Mhm.
became famous on Bigger Pockets. So his like he bought 2 single family homes, was like, this isn't cutting it, and then his third deal was a master lease on a 130 unit building that he did a value add on it, increased it by like $6 million. That was his third deal. Yeah, Joe
Wow.
Fearless or something. I'm a
Huh.
Bigger Pockets guy from back in the day, and like
Yeah.
bigger pockets used to be better because now it's just kind of saturated because they've already ran through the gauntlet so many times. But I'd hear things like that, and I'm like, man, there's got to be a way to do this. Um, so like I said, I mentioned I put that seller finance in on that $7 million portfolio. It was like 136 properties, something ridiculous like that. Um, but I never really closed anything until 2021. I closed a sixplex. It was a seller finance. Um, the owner was from Chicago, got in over his head up here in Milwaukee, and basically almost walked for nothing. Um, and then, so I had a little bit of experience, and then we had done some creative deals in the pre foreclosure space. Um, that was kind of nice. But this was my first ever like legitimate sub two. So, and it just really fell into place at the right time.
Mm. That's
Got it.
awesome.
Yep. And what had happened is maybe 3 weeks before this, I went down a rabbit hole with Pace and must have watched like 10 hours of just like sub two videos, right? And my wife sent me that's funny. She texted me right then and there.
Well,
Uh, so my wife texted me, and she was a part of our like lead gen and acquisitions team, and said, hey, check out this fourplex. It's priced really well. So I immediately called the owner. He said, hey, man, the fourplex is gone, but I got this 16 units. It's a 10 unit building and a 6 unit building that I want to offload for 570. I was like, okay. He's like, but the 10 unit needs about $30,000 worth of work and it's vacant. And, but the 6 unit is fully occupied, or at that point, I think there was 5 of the 6 units were rented, and it doesn't need anything. I'm like, okay. So we go to look at the 10 unit building first because it's vacant. And when we walk in, it's totally underwater.
Oh
And
no.
pipes had burst. It was like negative 21 degrees here in
oh
Milwaukee.
man.
Oh no.
Freezing. And this guy was so shell shocked. I'm the one that had to go in and turn his water off. Like I'm literally wearing, and of course I'm wearing like a nice suit because I've never met the guy before, and I'm wearing my nice dress shoes, and freezing cold. My
Dang.
hands, in fact, I don't think I've ever been that cold because I got soaking wet. The pipes were, the water was all over me. I'm going in trying to turn it off. It's already like a foot high in the basement, the water, because it must have been running for a couple days. And so, yeah, it was wild. But the reason why that's important is because I had to immediately. I tried to talk to him for a couple minutes. I'm like, dude, I have to go like warm up. Like this is crazy, because I was like shaking. I went into the car. I got on the phone, called a couple people, totally unrelated, and I was going to take off. But I'm like, you know what? Go in there and renegotiate with this guy. So I went back in. I said, hey, obviously we're not going to be able to do 570 on this one. But I can do 470 or 475, I think it was. And he said, well, I can't do that because I owe 456. And, I'd be underwater if I sold at that point. And then I essentially talked him into a subject too, kind of explained it to him a little bit. He was interested, and he actually was familiar because he almost did one with an investor from California. So that was kind of nice, at least, he was sort of familiar with the process. We did a handshake agreement. The next day he goes ghost on me. I'm getting the contract written up, and I called him and he said, well, hey, my contractors were in there and they said that it's not going to be as much as I thought it was going to be. Probably even it already needs 30K, but the areas that got hit the most were the areas that already need worked on. So maybe 40,000, something like that, $40,000 needs to be done. And I said, well, first of all, I was like, was that your property management company that said that, or was that like an actual contractor? And he said, well, it was my property management company. And I said, well, hey, man, they're not in the construction business. They don't really know what prices are. I'm like, I was in there. I think it's going to be a lot more than that. And not only that, did you file for the insurance claim? And he said, yeah, I went ahead and filed it last night. I said, how about this? And I've had an insurance issue before where I ended up making a ton of money. I said, you might end up making more money with less of a headache through the insurance. How about this? We'll write up the contract for the 470. We'll do a subject to. You'll get $15,000 in cash. I'll take over the remaining balance at like 456 or whatever. And you can keep whatever the insurance pays out. And he's like, okay, whatever, he agrees to it. And then we also moved up the closing to like next Friday, because I'm like, no, it was originally going to be like 3 weeks away. Like, there's no way this guy's it's never going to last that long. So we moved it up to next Friday. Long story short, it closes, and I got $995,000 worth of real estate for $456,000 subject to the existing mortgage, $15,501.08 out of pocket, and only about $7,500 went to the seller. The rest went to the closing.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yep. And then not only that, we went to go walk the sixplex, and it's in like mint condition. 13 bedrooms total, mint condition. I walked in and it looked like my properties after we flipped them. In fact, and then come to find out they were flipped in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah. So so that sixplex, he walked on it for 168,000 plus the $7,000 if you count splitting half of the cash out of pocket. And then it was 5 of the 6 units were rented, and then like 2 weeks later we got 6 units rented. It's rented for $5,260 a month, and the mortgage is like 14 or 1,500 or something like that.
Sounds like the best swimming time you ever had in your life. You had to just go swimming for that.
I know. Well, that's what they say. The bigger the problem you solve, the more money you make. So.
That's cool, man. That is an incredible deal, man. So I'm gonna, walk out on a limb here and assume that that's the biggest deal you've done thus far. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it'll probably be the biggest deal I ever do. I always talk about how to be in real estate for the next 30 years and probably never replicate that again. So, and not only that, the 10plex that we're going to put about 45K into it. It's almost ready. It's supposed to be ready before April 1st. And then we already have Guest House, which is an adult rehabilitation housing agency here. They're going to pay for the 8 single family or the 8 1-bedroom rentals, like and they're paying $895 a month, which is actually $300 a month over the retail rents in the area for a 1-bedroom. And then not only
Wow.
that, we've got the 2 downstairs. They're commercial. Sorry about
That is really loud. What is that? Is
I
that your?
apologize. My phone. I know how to.
It's so loud on this end.
Oh, sorry. Do not disturb on. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know if you could hear it or not. But
Yeah.
long story short, that the 10 unit will rent for like just under $10,000 a month.
Wow. So what was the exit strategy here? You didn't actually sell it. Did you wrap this thing, or what did you do?
No, we had it listed for sale, the sixplex.
Mm-hmm.
The highest offer we got was like 365,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to have a serious conversation with myself. It's like 2 years
Okay.
ago, if you were told that you had a 6-unit building that cash flowed at like almost $3,000 a month, and you got it for $168,000,
Mm-hmm.
would you sell that property?
Mm.
And I essentially I convinced myself that I'm just going to keep it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn around. It is a sub 2, but the guy I bought it from, his credit must not have been that great because the interest was like already over 7%.
Mm.
And so what I'm going to do is after the seasoning period here in about 4-ish months, I'm going to just refinance it down to that 168 and probably decrease my monthly payments on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Smart.
Yeah.
So you sold the 10 unit, right? And then you kept the 6.
Nope, it's still being fixed up. So.
Oh, okay, got it, man. Got it. Yep. That's awesome.
So the 6 unit was the one that was listed for sale at $400,000.
Right.
So, but the highest offer we got was $365, and I think like my realtor says, hey, if this was 6 months ago, you would have probably sold it for $420. But the market's kind of tight here a little bit in Milwaukee, and people are. It's in the south side of Milwaukee, but it's like right on like Greenfield Avenue. And if anybody's familiar with that, it's not like the best area in the world. It's not the worst, It's a decent area, really. Most of our properties are in there. It's just that a lot of the investors in that area, they don't want to like pay. They want to try, unless it's somebody from California, like they don't want to pay anything, So, but that's why Milwaukee cash flow is king. I mean, it's crazy. Like our 3-plex we got for $100,000, rents for like $3,400 a month.
Nice.
So
that's awesome, man.
Yep.
That's
Why am
awesome.
I not buying deals in Milwaukee? That's what I got to figure out.
Well, I'll tell you this, bigger pockets. Brandon, what's his last name? He wrote a book like on investing. Mm-hmm. It was like one of the books he wrote. Like there was like a whole paragraph on just Milwaukee in that book.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, I don't know, maybe 23, 24 when I read it. And I remember because I had just moved here to Milwaukee at the time, like 2017 maybe. And I remember like laying in bed and like reading about it. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is where I live. And then it's true. I mean, it's so true. I mean, purchase prices are dirt cheap, at least before COVID, and rent is ridiculously high. I'm talking,
So are you buying anywhere else? Or are you strictly just buying in Milwaukee, or are you trying to kind of branch out of state?
We're buying all over the country now.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of figured. So what would you consider in obviously, I think over time as we continue to buy property, our buy box expands. But what would you say if you're telling somebody new, right? Like, this is my buy box. Like, what would you tell somebody that was new and starting out about where your buy box needs to be, or how you come up with that, and where your buy box has kind of gone to over time?
Absolutely. It's a great question. I would start with house hacking, try to get a 4-plex with an FHA home loan, and live in 1 unit and rent the other 3, and hope that you're cash flowing while also living for free. That's how we did it. We house hacked like the first 5 houses we bought. So we went from one to the next, and then me and my wife weren't married at the time, so we were like every 6 months we were buying a new one, right? And I'm also a veteran, so I've actually utilized multiple VA home loans, whether they were refinanced out, or for example, we had the fire on one of them that wiped out the VA. So you can have two VA home loans at once. It's called your first tier and second tier entitlement, right?
Yeah,
So
so this is interesting to me because I'm a vet as well. I'm a 100% disabled vet as well, right?
no,
So
it's no property taxes for you either, huh?
nope. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because we did a sub two a couple weeks ago on a home with a veteran in Houston, Texas, and he's 100%. And then currently the escrow, so essentially the escrow was like practically zero. And come to find out, it's because he wasn't paying taxes. I already knew that existed, but they were trying to sell the sub two or sell the property with that included. And I'm like, no way. Like, I know how this works. Like, first of all, this is probably some sort of fraud, right? I mean, because that's a little bit beyond just doing a regular sub two, you know, that's essentially taking advantage of like a tax loophole. And then second of all, once you added in the Houston's taxes, it like went from like a $700 a month cash flow to like literally negative 200.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we didn't end up getting that one. So, but that's pretty interesting because you got to watch out for stuff like that, you know, because if you just looked at the mortgage statement, you would have seen like, oh, wow, this is going to be a great deal. And then the moment you took it over and he went and changed his residency in the county to something else, you would have been hit with that, been in trouble.
Mm.
Well, it's interesting, man, because I just ran into that issue and I was trying to figure out how to work around on that, right? So maybe you can expand on that just a little bit because that would be helpful to me, right? So I had a VA loan that I purchased, and of course he left and he went off to go and purchase another property, and then the property taxes what ended up happening is the appraised value of the house went up, right? So by $100,000. Interesting how they came up with that. Anyway, but like how would you go about trying to circumvent? I've understood like placing it into a trust or something along those lines might circumvent. Do you know of anything?
I'm not exactly sure of your question.
Like so so here in Texas we have the homestead exemption. And so the homestead exemption, when that vet went to go buy his new property, that homestead exemption dropped off, right? And so my understanding is you can place it into a trust and you can circumvent that homestead exemption, like dropping off. I'm not totally sure, but any tricky ways of keeping that mortgage like where you initially bought it, because my mortgage climbed $400 on that house like overnight.
Yeah. So it's funny because you're living proof of what I was afraid of. And you're not alone in even separate from that, and I'll get back to that. That's happening all over the country, right? So the pre-foreclosure rates are going up because taxes went up so much, and people living on these like slim margins, their taxes going up $1 or $2 or $3 or $400 a month is the difference between them being able to pay for their home and not. But back to your question, I don't know because I'm assuming he was 100% disabled.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the thing is that the benefit to him is that when he doesn't want you to keep that property, he doesn't want that property to keep that exemption because you're only allowed to have one, the one you're living in. So it wouldn't have benefited him for it to keep the exemption, right? So as soon as he moves to his next property, he's going to go and claim it as his primary residence, so that way he can have the benefit. Right? And I don't know if there's a way to move it into a trust or this, that, and the next to keep it that way, because really it's up to what he's telling the county, right? So if he's telling the county, hey, this is my new primary residence, then I think you're kind of SOL no matter what.
Yeah, because I think they make a comparison to the deed, right? I mean, that would be my understanding.
I actually almost, from my understanding of the process, is like it's almost what he records to the county as like his primary residence. Well, from my understanding, I'm only 80% service connected, so I'm not. But I have talked to people that are 100% done that. In fact, I recommend it to people that are 100% every time they move to a state that allows that. But from my understanding, the way it works in Wisconsin is that they're only allowed to have one. It's their primary residence, and they have to kind of file that property as such with the county. So he probably did whatever he did with you, and then immediately went to the county and said, hey, this is my new residence. And then they fucking changed it from yours to his. And that was pretty much it. So,
Yeah, man. It's so, anyways, that's that whole failing forward thing, right? You live and you learn. You try to figure it out and then fix the mess, right? Like, luckily, it still cash flows about $200 a month, but we'll see what we can do. Maybe drop that appraised value down and see if I can, get that $400 back.
exactly. It's funny, Damon, you being living proof of that scenario is pretty wild, right? Because
Yeah.
that was like a once in a lifetime scenario. And like 3 weeks later, you already went through it. That's crazy. That is wild. But back to the Bible. Go ahead.
That's kind of the funny thing about this community, right? Like anytime you think you're the only one, you find out really quickly like you're not the only one, and that other people have been through it. And that's good, when you're able to bring somebody like yourself who's kind of gone through like trials, and you can ask questions and find out, which would allude me to the question, right? That, would you, like being in real estate where you are now, agree that, networking is the key factor? If you're a man on an island in the real estate industry, you've got the wrong idea about things.
Let's put it this way. If I didn't move my company into the direction with the team leads, for example, one gentleman's name is Daniel Coletti. He is an instructor at West Point. And the other gentleman, his name is Barrett Smith, has a major sales background. And then my buddy Patrick Horine, who is also, he went to USC. Like, these guys are well above me when it comes to technology and things like that. If I didn't hand over the reins to them to be able to like onboard and handle our Trello, which is we're going to be using as our CRM type, and handle the batch leads, setting up the batch leads with the batch dialer. I apologize, the batch dialer, and then getting all of the teams coordinated as such, I would have failed, right? So having that network, having those people that are better than you at the things that you're deficient in is a necessity to be successful in this industry.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, I think it's man, it's funny, like my entrance into the industry was as an agent. And I remember being an agent and coming in and just hating it, because I was like, it's so cutthroat and all of these people play so close to the hip. But then as I became an investor, now, and I'm not taking away from the agents, right? They have their place, there's a necessity, all of that. But I just always found it was so cutthroat. When I came to being an investor, it was a network, right? And then when I started figuring out how to grow my wealth, how to grow the amount of properties that I had, it was doing deals with other people. It was working together. It was not being, scared like, oh, I'm not going to get the whole thing. Yeah, it was better to have half of 10 than one of all, right? Like,
exactly. It's so funny you mentioned that too, because that's kind of the model we have with our team right now. Everybody's entitled to a small piece. And because you're exactly right, it's better to have half of 10 than one of one. So that's genius. So what are your guys' plans for growing your team then?
well, yeah, man. So, like, funny enough, I've kind of pivoted. I know Lance has what they're doing. I'm not moving away from real estate per se. I am still buying real estate, but my main focus is not there right now. I'm actually doing business acquisitions. I ended up going to the Deal Maker, the Protege weekend there in Tampa, and I got my mind blown by Carl Allen and all those guys. And so I'm assuredly still trying to buy real estate because I use those for the depreciation and the cash flow. Those things never lie, right? But going in and being able to buy businesses between $1 and $5 million revenue, between $100,000 and $500,000 EBITDA, so that we can attain that cash flow. And kind of the want for that is, the cash flow will drive more real estate where we can start, moving into multifamily. I I would like to be able to come in and probably purchase, that was a goal of mine this year to purchase, at least one multi-family. So what about you, Lance?
Yeah. Yeah, I just actually decided to take on a deal. Well, I'm going to start analyzing a pretty big one, actually.
Was it
And so,
one in Houston, or is that
yes, the one in Houston that I shared. Yeah, you know what? I decided, I was like, why aren't we actually just going to try and take this on? So, you know what? I'm going to start doing some digging, and I'm going to bring in, I'm going to find one extra, maybe two other players, but man, I'm going to just go for this thing. And you only live once. I feel confident. I feel ready, man. So it's a big deal. And I actually just got on a Zoom with Vina Jetty about a couple hours ago, and she was like, I presented it to the group, and she goes, Lan, it was like a closed group, right? Like 16 people, man. And I just threw it in the chat, and she's like, yeah, she's like, I'll buy this. My team would probably buy this deal, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, wait a minute, Lance, why aren't you buying this? Why aren't you going after this? Straight called me out on the Zoom. And I was like, literally started sweating. I was like, oh my God.
there?
uh,
Well, still, man, sometimes I get scared when I buy a $50,000 house. I totally get it, man. I was on the phone today with a realtor for one of the deals that we're going to put under contract this week, and I was like, "Are you like I ran these comps? I got it at this price. I really think it's at 175. Like, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure." And she's like, I got it at 175 too. Like, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, all right. Like, I get it. And then for you, I mean, over $1 million purchase, couple $1 million, I can't remember, 1.9, something like that. What was it exactly?
It's bigger now.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, right, we talk about networking and how that works. So the guys that are bringing that deal are kind of close personal friends of mine. So I'm the one that's going to be doing the assignment or probably taking some sort of like a small equity stake in the deal, but I can't really play negotiator on it. But these guys are, pretty heavy hitters in terms of operators. They have well over 1,000 doors. And so they're liquidating, most of their stuff here in Houston. And they've kind of given a tidbit on this deal. And the first one was 16 units at 1.7. But then I came to him and I said, look, I've got people coming who want, a bigger package than the 16. Can you offer anything up? And so I've been on the back end, like dually negotiating, like I'm trying to get it to be bigger and bigger because I think at the end of the day, we're somewhere around 200 doors, but I got to get them confident enough with whoever's buying. So I took that 1.7, we turned it into 3.4 with 66 units. And now Lance is going to try to attempt to take that thing down. We'll see, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. It sounds like
I'm going to go for it. Let's go, man.
I'm excited for you, man. It's like one of those pull it off and you never work again if you don't want to type of situation.
Well, we've been preparing for this, I didn't think it would something like would come up this fast, and who knows? I'm going to put 100% into it though, and I'm going to find, I already have a couple of really key players, man, and so let's just do it. Like, why not? Like, I'm ready to go,
Well, if you ever need any additional, just reach out to me. I can at least I can maybe point you in the right direction for some people that have even a little bit more money than I do. So
absolutely, I appreciate that, man. And we've been going, we've been underwriting, some deals and stuff. So we've been in the realm of multifamily for a while. I've got guys like Damon. I've got, a personal friend of mine who's got over 50 million in real estate. Gabe Hamill, he was on Bigger Pockets. So we actually had him on the show. We'll probably bring him on again when we get a little bigger, Damon. But Gabe is dope. Everything he's done is creative owner finance, over 50 million in assets, man. So
that's crazy.
I feel confident having those guys in my corner. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I'd love to meet him. So we're kind of on the same trajectory here. So
absolutely, brother. And that's why the law of attraction, man. Let's see.
I think I kind of said today, like, whether you're doing real estate, multifamily, single family, right? I'm willing to do all of the above that makes me money, right? And we're entrepreneurs at the end
Right.
of the day, right? Like
Yep.
if I can buy a business that makes me cash flow, great. If I can buy a multifamily, a house, a whatever it is, right? We're here
Mhm.
to do that. And I think the main thing is, man, I have learned to just lean on other people, right?
Yeah.
I just, hey, I don't know what I don't know. Fill me in, teach me, and then I'll know that thing, and it'll be easier to do the next time around. You know?
Absolutely. That's what I'm. And
Yep.
I mentioned that with my team leads earlier. So I have a I'm a big jacuzzi kind of guy. Lola, I'll get to your question in a second, but this is funny. So I was in the jacuzzi earlier, and my brain only ever turns off in two places, either when I'm getting a massage or when I'm in the jacuzzi. And other than that, my brain is just like constant, right? Real estate, real estate, real estate, real estate. I'll literally I dream about my company. I wake up about thinking about my company. I go to bed thinking about my company. I'm watching TV thinking about my company. I'm eating thinking about my company. It never stops. It's almost horrible sometimes, like if I'm being honest. And this is the first time in my real estate career that I really passed on something like to these team leaders and felt like it was 100% necessary because I wasn't capable potentially of handling what was happening. And I actually got really sad about it. Right. And it was like, it was wild. It was like the first time where I felt like humbled almost like, wow, I
Mm.
can't do this. And I had to have another serious conversation with myself and just say, you know what, this is what it's like when you grow bigger. Like eventually we all hit a level to where we really, 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 really need the support. Like a company, there's not just one CEO running the whole company, right? I mean, there's a million people doing everything. Could you imagine if a CEO had to go and work with the sales team and send out their emails every day? Like he would probably be going crazy, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
To
absolutely.
touch on you talking about leaning on others, I'm having to learn to lean. So,
Yeah. That's
and
powerful.
it's a humbling experience, man. It
It is,
really,
man.
it's a
Mhm.
humbling experience to really have to lean on others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've told my story before, man, but when I first got out of the military, I ended up being a homeless vet for 4.5 years. I lived out of the back of an SUV, right?
Wow.
And I've been blessed, man. I started a little handyman company that grew into a demolition company, and then a home building company, and then a full scale commercial and government contracting and development company. And I ended up selling that thing off. But one of the hardest things for me to learn was handing off tasks to other people because it was my baby, right? It was like it was the thing that I created to pull myself out of being a homeless vet. So yeah, man, that really resonates
Was it
with
kind of
me.
like your crutch at the time, Like you almost needed it, like it was like your security blanket.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
It not only that, but it validated me too, right? Because when I was a homeless vet, people looked at me like I was a piece of garbage. And so when I got that validation, it was like, look at this thing that I built. And the funny thing was it was the thing that was holding me back the most. Made me a ton of money, don't get me wrong, but it was the thing that was holding me back the most.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's an awesome story. I'm glad you shared that with me, Damon.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's powerful. I've heard it several times now, and it's a good one, man. It's your story, right? Like my problem was I built a successful construction company as well, but I was stuck in it too, and it took me a while to learn, right, to scale. I didn't scale it properly. I just was in it, inundated in it, and I was working 12 plus hours a day. And then I started flipping houses on the side, 14, 16-hour days. My wife and I both. Like she's a badass. She will roll, like she can get dressed up and dolled up and looking fine as wine, right? But she will get the work pants on, the Carhartts on, and she'll get in the trenches with me. She's done it for years, and she's a badass. But yeah, like learning, like if I would have known what I know now, I would have scaled that business from day one. I would have started totally different, built it totally different. But we live and we learn, man.
Absolutely.
And it's cool that you're learning it right now. Like, yeah, you get to enjoy the journey too, man. Right? That's a huge thing, man. That, like, you know, when you have that shift, like that, like those little adjustments is what really makes or breaks us. You know, like you can keep going on the same path, and if you're like 1 degree off, you're not going to hit, you know, you're not going to hit your goals. You're not going to hit your true potential. When you start getting really sensitive to those things, like those little adjustments, right?
Yeah.
You start really tuning in and honing your craft and getting really good in one lane, like you and I talked about. You're like, man, you know, so many people are just like, they get shiny object syndrome and they're all over the place. Everything looks awesome. I want to do it all. And you and I talked about it, you know, a couple of weeks ago. You're like, dude, I just do pre-foreclosures. That's it. Like that's my lane, and I stay in it, and I got really good at it. I was like, dude, it was really inspiring, man, because
Makes a ton of
I
sense.
I've had to recalibrate a couple of times since joining Sub2. I did the same thing. I'm going to do multifamily. No, I'm going to do RV park. No, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to go for that. And my wife and I literally had to sit, and I would set an entire day apart. We had to do it twice now, and now we're in a pretty good lane right now. But dude, I just couldn't stay focused. You know, there was too many opportunities ever. Like, you know, we got to just get really good at this, and then we can do that, right? So,
back to Damon's buy box, right? So I got really good at buying properties on the MLS that cash flowed for as little money as I could. And then that I was able to leverage that into what I'm doing today in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And when I talk to new investors, that's the thing that sucks right now. Interest rates are high, prices are high. You can't do what I did anymore. You know, if you're a new investor in 2023 right now, I realistically couldn't do what I did, right? Because I was only making like $17,000 a year. And if I wouldn't have been able to afford the $60,000 house that I bought that now is worth $125.
Yeah.
My mortgage would have been literally double. Or like my mortgage is like $485 a month there. It would have been like it's almost $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel so sorry for them. And that's part of the reason why I made the pivot into pre-foreclosure so heavily as well, because I saw prices were rising so much. I didn't predict the interest rates. I knew interest rates were going to go up. Obviously, they were so low, but I didn't think they would go up this high, and they're going to keep going. So, man, off market.
The pain's not over yet, man.
No, it's not over yet. It's not even close. In fact, everybody's locked in. I saw something on Instagram. It was like this 30-year-old woman that was like, my starter home just became my forever home because I can't afford anything else now. Yeah. And you watch anybody that knows anything about like economics or this, that, and the next, and you're going to see that there's going to be no inventory for the next 20 years, right? 10 years at least, because there's going to be no equity in properties. Interest rates are going to be so low that they're locked into, they're going to be stuck. So inventory is going to be the only inventory you're going to see in the next few years is going to be the pre-foreclosures.
Man, that's heavy.
And then here's my biggest competitors. One of my really good friends works for a huge company. They lend they lend at minimum $15 million to these huge investors. And they said the problem right now is that these big companies have been stockpiling cash because cash was so cheap the last few years. And now they have all this cash and they don't know what to do with it. Right. So my competitors in the pre-foreclosure space are going to be companies worth like $3 or $4 billion. So it's not like I'm going to be able to come in and, 08 happened and we're able, some investors were able to buy up everything, gobble it up, $8,000-$9,000 homes that are worth $200K now. It's not going to, it will be 40%, 50% off of what it is now, but it's not going to be 08 again, unfortunately. So I don't know. We're in for a wild ride here in this real estate space.
We are.
It's going to be.
And in this 25-point basis hike that's coming, I don't know how you feel about it, but the multifamily space really hasn't been hit too hard yet. And this 25-point basis hike is slotted to be that, right? Like this is the point where all of that breaks loose. All of those variable interest rates and syndicators, they're going to go bankrupt. And a lot of those properties are going to be sitting on the steps of the courthouse, So yeah, it's going to be a roller coaster here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then not to mention, you mentioned the taxes going up, right? So taxes going up, margins get slimmer. People don't realize that whenever, if you're about to go into pre-foreclosure because of a tax increase, you can actually ask for a reappraisal, right? And they're willing to work with you. But most people don't know that, right? I didn't even know that until I was about a year into pre-foreclosures. How the hell are they supposed to know that? So it's going to get wild. Strap in your seatbelts. I don't know what it's going to happen, but it's going to be crazy.
Well, hey, Josh,
Mhm.
man, do you
Yeah.
mind if we just try to take a few questions from people, man? I know you're probably pressed for time, but if you could give us like maybe 5-10 minutes to see if anybody would like to ask questions. So, hey, Jesse, I'll let you unmute and come in and ask.
Okay. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Good, Jesse. How are you?
Doing well. Can you hear me okay? It's the same Wi-Fi as Lance's.
Great.
Okay. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you. And I love the fake it until you become it behind you. I've said for years and years, fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
And I think it's such a good mindset, just putting yourself in that spot. But what I was curious to know, just as I kind of like listened to your story,
Mhm.
and I just love hearing people's points of view on what they would tell their younger selves. Like Pace said, if I knew now what I knew then, I would tell myself to start raising private money. I believe that that's Pace's quote. What would you tell your younger self if you could go back and give yourself like one piece of advice at the beginning?
That's a really good question. That's a tough one because I think I did everything pretty well. The only thing that I ever regretted previously was that instead of buying a single family home initially, I wish I would have bought a fourplex. I wish my first ever purchase with my VA home loan would have fourplex. That would probably be about the only thing. Everything else, I've been pretty lucky enough to kind of do it right on accident.
Wait.
sometimes.
So you'd say that you'd start buying multifamily. That's what you would have
Right.
told yourself. Just start
Right.
buying multifamily.
Exactly. So we have all multifamilies except for that very first one, which was a single family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, but I didn't see, that's the thing. Okay, I never really explained how I got into real estate. It was a total accident. One of my best friends. So I was it was my stepdad said you should buy a house. When you get out of the Navy, use your VA home loan, buy a house. It'll be a lot better than renting. Settle down, go to college, get a job forever, right? So I reached out to one of my best friends. I was like, hey, I'm going to buy this house. Like, let's move in together and it'll be great, Well, he didn't pay me rent the first month. And we worked out an agreement. He didn't pay me rent the second month. We've been friends for 15 years. And I'm like, all right, fuck you. I kicked him out. And I was like, all right, well, I don't want to live here by myself, number one. Number two, I'd rather have other people come in and help me pay these bills. So I actually ended up renting all the other bedrooms out and was cash flowing with just that, even while living in the property, because the mortgage was only $480 a month. And then my wife, who lives in Milwaukee, this was in Ohio. My wife, who's in Milwaukee, I decided this long distance thing isn't working. I want to just be done with Dayton. I was drinking too much. I was not going to be successful there. I packed up 6 months after I bought the house, moved to Milwaukee, rented the bedroom I was in, and was now making like $1,100 a month on it. Was like, wow, this is awesome. And we never looked back. We've been buying multifamilies ever since.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Jesse. So to summarize that, for all of you guys out there, buy a fourplex with an FHA or VA home loan, live in one of the units and rent the others. And if that's the only property you ever buy as a rental, you'll still be happy that you did it in 30 years. So
Lola, I believe that FHA home loan is like a 3% down, right? For the first time home buyer to do like a multifamily or quadplex like that. It's like 3% down. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you do that?
Yep, exactly. 3.5.
Yeah.
Not only that, they've actually changed the rules a little bit to where now you can use the current rental income in the property to decrease your debt to income ratio.
Oh, amazing.
So like when I first did it, that wasn't a thing, but as of a couple of years ago, they made that a thing now. So even if you wouldn't have qualified for the property, you use the current rental income to help you qualify, and now you could, yeah, so you can leverage into a like a $400,000 or $500,000 fourplex with only like a $60,000 a year job.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing, man. Yeah, wait, that's a no-brainer, right? Like, why would you not do that?
you
Hey,
know, and
hold on.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and thank you, Joshua. Really, yeah, your story is inspiring, and sharing how you started, and like the whole journey, and how you were able to. I think when you were talking, you mentioned that it's interesting that these days it's hard to like you see investors really don't know how to like make what's the word, calculate and know yes, I'm new to real estate, so I don't know the right words. I'm still trying to. I guess my question to you is, how did you build yourself? Because I'm looking at the property. I already called, so I'm looking at the MLS right now for the property I want to buy, but I'm looking at something that I can add value to, right? And I called realtors, one that really spoke to me, told me about the property, and like, because I was like, this price is even more than what it's worth, because it's something that you have to, there's some remodel you need to do and all of that. But like in my mind, I'm just making the calculations, and I'm like, it's placed for 220 right now, the offer price. But I'm thinking, like, my calculations, like maybe even 170, right? So how did you build yourself to the place where you were able to like look at properties and calculate right, know that it's cash flowing and all of that?
That's a good question. And not to bash Pace Morby at all, because Pace Morby changed my life. And one of my biggest qualms with the way he teaches is, if you look at like his first steps to getting into real estate, it's like, number one, get an LLC. And then there's a whole list. Number one, learn how to calculate a deal. I was very lucky that I hopped into Bigger Pockets. They had that I think I was lucky because they were promoting their own thing. They were like, buy this Bigger Pockets calculator. You know what I mean? So whatever they were promoting actually really benefited me. So I bought that Bigger Pockets calculator, kind of became an expert in there, learned how to underwrite with CapEx, with vacancy, with property management. I learned, like, right now on average, our water bills are about $50 a month per unit, right? These little things that you learn, I learned pretty quickly just by having really good resources initially. What I would recommend to you is I use an app called Ballpark Deals. I'll pull it up, or you could just search a rental calculator, and so it looks like this. And you can go in, you can find the tax information typically, as a part of the MLS. You can literally enter every single one of these, and it's going to spit out a number for you. And if you want to calculate ARV and estimating how much rehab cost is, now that's a little bit more difficult, and that took more time. Fortunately for me, I just got lucky in that. And me and my wife, we did all of our own flips the first couple and did a little sweat equity. So we didn't have to pay anybody else to come in and do it for us, right? But yeah, so to summarize that question, pull up Ballpark Deals. It's free. Punch in your numbers, and you want to look for, at minimum, I look for about a 12% total ROI, or about $150 a month cash flow per unit. That's my absolute bottom floor cash flow. So per month. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Yes, that did. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just
Go
add
ahead.
to that
Sorry.
too. Just remember, guys, like, everybody's process is different, and the way that everybody gets there is different. So, like Joshua said, like, he'll do it one way, Lance will do it another, I might do it another, but there's a lot of trial and error, question asking, all of that. Like, it took me a while before I got to a point where I was, underwriting, fully underwriting deals. So I think that app that's an amazing way to start. So I appreciate that,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, and that's like really entry level learning how to do it. Just pop it into a calculator. I've kind of advanced into like a spreadsheet calculator that works a little bit better, but just for a basic little calculator to have on the fly, it works really well.
Okay,
Jeff,
Jimmer, unmute, man, and feel free to ask a question. You're on mute.
Two things here. Okay, sorry.
that's okay.
Thank you, Joshua, for all that you're talking about. I'm not into buying multifamilies like you. I would love to one day, but I just really don't know enough about real estate. But what I want to know is I'm out there and I'm hunting, I'm looking. It's very hard for me to find a cash flow place. I actually am looking in Tennessee right now. How bad or how good if I make the decision to break even, or even if I was $100 minus cash flow, but as a high growing equity area, how should I do? Should I do like Pace says, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow? What do you think?
I mean, in the current state of that we're in right now, I mean, values could fall as far as 40%. So if you're hunting appreciation right now in your deal, I highly would recommend not doing that.
Okay.
You're also mentioned that you're not doing multifamily. Well, unfortunately, single family is really hard to find cash flow in, right? Because think about it, when you're buying multifamilies, you're competing against investors, right? When you're buying single family homes, you're competing against anybody. So cash flow to Joe doesn't mean shit. So he'll overpay, right? So if you're buying only single family homes, you're competing against families, right? So you're to be able to find something like that, you're going to have to go off market, or you're going to have to go distressed homes, or you're going to have to go and look at the proper, walk up and down the street and look at the ones that need new roofs and this, that, and the next, and say, hey, would you be interested in selling your home?
That's what I'm doing right now. I'm actually doing a drive around looking, but I'm also scouring for over 45 days. What's a good tip you could give me to get around the agents though, if they're an on market listing, to be able to talk to the seller? Because they're not blocking. A lot of them will say, yeah, we'll do some creative finance, but then when you get down to it, they changed it around and they won't let you talk to the seller.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's why, I don't have the patience for realtors.
Understood?
I tell my team to say, once it hits the MLS, get it. That doesn't mean you can't find a good deal. I mean, like I said, I bought 4 or 5 from the MLS, but if at this day and age with high interest, high prices falling, man, I don't know. I think it's just time to find something different. What my team is doing though is we are calling on pre-foreclosures. Now, active pre-foreclosures, they're not listed with an agent, so we filter that out. So if they're currently active on the MLS, it's filtered out of our queue, and we're going direct to seller, right? And we're hunting 40-50% equity, and we're getting it.
Okay.
So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joshua. Thank you for your answers. One last question quickly. If you were to get into a multifamily, what's usually the minimum they'll allow you in? And I'm not talking about a syndication, but if, like these guys were talking about, Lance and all, do they go after multiple people? Because you have to have a minimum of 100,000, 200,000, 300,000.
So let's be clear. So, when you say multifamily, how many properties are you thinking qualifies for that? Just out of curiosity.
Minimum of 8.
Okay, so when I'm saying multifamily, I'm thinking 3 to 4 units as well, right, and up. So that's kind of my criteria: single family 1 unit, duplex 2, multifamily literally up 3 and above. That's my criteria. Whether that's the industry standard term, I don't know. But what I'd recommend for you potentially is it 5 and above. Well, that's commercial, right? So, yeah. So 5 and above is commercial. There you go, Lance. But commercial multifamily, I guess you could say. I'm buying residential multifamily, which could be 3 and 4 units. Look into residential multifamily, 3 and 4 unit buildings. And then you can. So not only that, you're not competing with the families as much anymore, competing with the single family homes as much anymore. And not only that, you could potentially, I don't know, do you have an active FHA that you're currently using?
No, I'm not. As you can see, I got gray hair. I don't have no FHA.
Well, there you go. Use an FHA, man. Buy a fourplex.
You can
know?
use one when you're in your 60s?
Yeah,
You've never used one before. I can't even remember, to go back from my first home ever. I can't remember what I did.
it doesn't matter. You can use as many FHAs as you want as long as they're not at the same exact time. Yeah, so my wife had like 3 FHAs. So
okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I won't hog up.
I got a question on that. I thought FHA required you to actually live in the property for a year.
it does.
Okay.
But I talked to the representatives over there, and they said we're not in the bushes making sure you're living in your home.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you again.
I literally called him, right? Because and I'll tell you, when my apartment burned down, the fourplex, I wasn't fulfilling my residency requirements, and I was panicked. And I was like fucking having a bad day. I called the VA because it was actually a VA home loan, and they were like, "Man, we're not in the bushes. Like, we're not fucking in the bushes outside of your house. Like, you don't have to worry about it. If anything, you would have to potentially worry about it with your mortgage company. However, interest rates are already 7%. Like, they got their cake and eat it too. The only time it's an issue is if it goes from like a really low percentage to a high percentage, right?
Mhm.
But they're never going to find out. And then when the fire happened, they're not going to make us think that I wasn't living there because they want the insurance to pay it so they can get their money back, right? So I think it's probably less than 1% of 1% of 1% for someone to ever get in trouble for that. You'd be more likely to get in trouble for a sub too, I would say. Not trouble, but be more likely to have the loan call or the mortgage called on a sub 2 than you would for somebody to call you out on your residency requirements on an FHA. That was a lot. That was a mouthful. But what I'm saying, Jimmer, is, man, hop on the MLS, find a reputable real estate company or brokerage in your area. See if they have a nice little filter for multi, 3 and 4 unit buildings. Look them up. Go to Rentometer or look up, what the rent prices are for that, and go and buy a fourplex, and then immediately put it under proper rent and forget about it.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, guys,
I'm actually sorry.
Foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, like low-hanging fruit. If you're not going after that, I mean, I just got one today. I got a 2-acre unrestricted property with a home on it for $12,000. Right.
Okay. I'm looking at the wrong trees then. I did close on my first house. I haven't closed on it. I put it under contract today. So not totally negative, but I'm listening to what you guys said. So thank you.
100%, man. Awesome. Thanks, Jimmer. All right, guys. Well, the time has come. I truly appreciate Joshua. Man, massive, massive value. Guys, time is the most important thing that we have as human beings. And when somebody's willing to come and give their time for us to learn, it is the most important value that somebody could bring. So from me to you, Joshua, one vet to another, man, I truly appreciate you. Thanks for all the knowledge. And thanks for spending a little time with us.
Thank you. Absolutely. I just want to shout out Alexander and Ernest, 2 of my team members that came and hopped in today. Plus, I think a couple more already bounced out, but thank you guys for showing up. I salute you. And thank you.
By the way, man, leave all your social media stuff. Can you give out your YouTube or Facebook or any of that stuff? Email?
I'll put my Instagram. The YouTube thing I tried for a day. That's hard. I need to pay somebody to help me with that stuff. That's
a team for that.
Same.
It's ridiculous. But hey, never reach out to me, man. Find me on Facebook or something. I've got some ideas for you, I think. So
awesome, man. And hey, man, I'd love to reach out to you as well, Joshua. Hopefully we can do something together. And yeah, guys, as always, please go like the Facebook, go like the Instagram, the Snapchats, whatever other social
YouTube.
media that we're on. Going like that stuff. Lance is the king of that stuff. But
That's
yeah,
right.
it helps us grow and it helps us bring more people in here so that they can bring value to you.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Josh.
man.
Great to have you, man. You kicked some major ass, and I love that you just let it fly. You know, no reservations. Raw and real, baby.
We don't have time for that around here.
That's right.
So
Right on.
all right,
Awesome,
boys.
man.
Guys,
So
we
much.
really appreciate you all. Everybody have a great night.